Don't call her a victim. Don't call her a symbol. Call her by the name that millions have whispered behind closed doors, the destroyer of a royal family.
It's kind of hard for Meghan to say that the UK is a racist country when the leader of the UK is darker skinned than her and the mayor of London is darker skinned than her, and I am a person who's probably darker skinned than her, and I've never experienced any kind of bigotry against myself besides the fact I'm a straight male. I'll get bigotry for that before I'll get bigotry for my skin color. She has attacked an age-old institution, and there are people who are very patriotic about that institution, and by attacking it and bringing a degree of distaste to it, there's gonna be people who don't like her.
Andrew Tate didn't come to offer pity. He came to expose. No detours, no politeness, no prelude. He opened his mouth and launched a missile straight at Meghan Markle, tearing through the manufactured facade that Western media has long upheld as a symbol of progress. To Tate, Meghan isn't the victim of the monarchy, she's the one holding the knife. And Harry is the first name on the list to be eliminated. She didn't just break a man. She vaporized an entire bloodline of tradition, loyalty, and honor. The atmosphere in the studio shifted after a single sentence. The cameras fell silent. The audience froze. Tate had just done what no one dared do on international television, speak an unpalatable truth. He didn't mock. He didn't smile. He stared directly into the camera as if speaking to every viewer, every man watching, and every family that once believed in the fairy tale of Harry and Meghan.
He used to be a warrior. He used to be a prince. And now what is he? A husband propping up his wife's perfume line and podcast brand.
Tate didn't just speak, he indicted. And the indictment began with the very weapon Meghan has always wielded, the carefully curated image of a progressive biracial American wife, brave, vulnerable at the right moments, and strong when convenient. He peeled back every layer of media makeup, every meticulously staged Oprah interview, every tear seemingly timed to fall during primetime television. This wasn't a misunderstood love story. This was a campaign. A calculated hijacking of royal imagery using emotion and the role of the victim as bait. The crowd that once cheered for Meghan now quietly deletes their posts, but not Tate. He charged straight into the battlefield where others merely whispered in private group chats.
Isn't liked by the majority of people is a cop-out. It's not the case.
And his first strike was an uncompromising uppercut aimed directly at Meghan and at a society too soft to realize just how deeply this media game has manipulated them. Tate wasn't in a frenzy. He was cold, strategic, and knew exactly where to strike at the fear of criticizing women, at the fear of being labeled prejudiced, at the fear of speaking the truth when it no longer aligns with the narrative. We live in a world where truth must kneel before emotion, and emotion she controls. And Meghan, once a symbol, is now called by her true name, the one who destroyed a man once beloved by the entire world. Part 1, Unmasking the Victim. Meghan Markle once cried. On stage under the spotlight in Oprah's embrace, but Andrew Tate didn't buy a single tear. And this time, he wasn't the only one.
I don't think race has anything to do with it. I think she's just a dislikable person and is trying to find another excuse for that, for people to treat her that way.
And this fits into one of your bigger narratives, doesn't it? Which is that you're very worried.
She didn't cry because she was hurt. She cried because she knew crying at the right moment could land her a multi-million-dollar deal. Tate escalated the confrontation to a new level. It wasn't just a personal attack. This was a direct indictment of the 21st century media game, where the victim is a scripted role and Meghan is the lead actress receiving thunderous applause from an audience too blind to see they're being played. He didn't deny that Meghan had been under pressure, but he exposed the sophistication in the way she turned pain into personal branding. If a woman is truly hurt, she seeks peace. Meghan went to Netflix. No one questioned why Meghan's tears always fell during prime time, why every crisis conveniently arrived just before a book release, or why her most vulnerable moments always had cameras ready. She doesn't run from the cameras. She lives for them. Tate argued Meghan wasn't oppressed by the royal family, but rather someone who knew how to exploit every internal rift to strengthen her narrative. A tone of voice, a cold glance from the palace, she turned it into a symbol of pain for women of color around the world. I'm not saying racism doesn't exist, Tate emphasized. I'm saying she's turned it into a get-out-of-accountability-free card. By tying every criticism to her skin color, Meghan built an invisible shield where anyone daring to ask questions would be met with self-righteous outrage. She has a privilege most white women don't even have. No one is allowed to question her. Tate didn't just call Meghan an emotional performer, he went further. He called her the CEO of pity, someone who knows how to weaponize pain to build an empire. And in that empire, every sob is a contract, every tear is a view, and every interview is another chapter in the story of I'm a victim, but strong. Meghan doesn't need evidence. She only needs a sad gaze and a broadcast network willing to air it unchecked. Tate declared this is no longer a personal story. This is a full-scale image strategy. And Meghan is now the face of a generation of women willing to twist reality just to make themselves shine. I've seen women who were truly hurt. They don't use their suffering as a VIP pass to the red carpet. Each of Tate's words struck deep into the public conscience. Because behind the backlash wasn't hatred, but the disappointment of a society losing the line between truth and performance. We can no longer tell real pain from scripted pain. And when that happens, every real victim gets left behind. Meghan didn't just hurt the royal family. Tate said she hurt the trust of an entire generation. Part 2, Harry from warrior to shadow. There was a time when the mention of Harry conjured up images of the Afghan battlefield, of the prince without a crown dressed in military uniform bowing his head to bid farewell to fallen comrades. A real soldier, not because he was born into royalty, but because he chose to face danger rather than hide behind castle walls. But now, Harry the warrior of yesterday now stands behind the scenes holding a camera, nodding along to the media script written by his wife. Andrew Tate didn't hold back. He called Harry a prince whose will had been surgically removed, cut off from his family, from the military, from his roots, and ultimately from his own identity. He didn't leave the royal family out of conviction. He left because he was led. According to Tate, the tragedy wasn't that Harry left England, it was that he left himself. In Meghan's glow, he didn't shine, he reflected. He wasn't a partner. He was living proof of a carefully curated victim narrative. If Meghan is the director, then Harry is merely a supporting character, pitiful but useful. Tate wasn't afraid to go into specifics. He referenced the times Harry was interrupted mid-interview, glancing back at his wife for permission to continue. The times he bowed his head in silence as Meghan spoke on behalf of them both. The times his eyes dimmed when asked about his father, and his only reply was a slight shake of the head. He is no longer the man who stood up to the Taliban, no longer the boy who stood beside his brother William at their mother's funeral. Now he's a symbol of surrender. And while Meghan continues to expand her emotional empire from talk shows to artisanal jam brands, healing podcasts, and inspiring children's books, Harry Eyes writes a memoir, a book titled Spare, but Tate pushed back. No, he's not the spare. He's what's left after everything else has been taken. Tate sees Harry as a product of an era where men are no longer taught how to maintain boundaries, an era where stepping aside for women has come to mean erasing oneself to become the backdrop for their awakening.
And for you to be competent, you have to have lived through some things. To be good at being a man, you have to have had a hard life. If you look at any superhero, his life was hard. This is the reality of it. And I think that
I don't blame Meghan for using Harry. I blame Harry for allowing himself to be used until there's nothing left. And the bitterest part, the very public that once adored Harry now doesn't know how to look at him anymore, with empathy, with pity, or quietly turning away, unwilling to witness a hero become a side character in his own life. Harry isn't being controlled by his wife. He's being controlled by a system where feminine emotion is the national flag and male strength is banned from broadcast. Tate wasn't mocking him, he was mourning. A funeral without flowers, without a eulogy, just a long, disappointed gaze at the man who once embodied royal pride and is now just a background voice in his wife's healing podcast. I don't hate him, Tate concluded. I just feel sorry for a man who once had the whole world and turned it into a jar of organic jam sold online. Part 3, a society that glorifies weakness.
But this shows how important it is for them to teach us to ignore our own eyes.
Andrew Tate wasn't just speaking about Meghan, not just about Harry. He was speaking about us, about a society that joyfully erects monuments to breakdowns and then calls it a healing journey. We live in an era where if a man cries, he's called brave. But if he stands tall, shoulders the burden, and keeps going, he's called toxic. Tate didn't deny the value of emotion. He simply refused to bow to it. In his view, Meghan isn't the problem. Harry isn't the problem. The problem is a world that has kneeled before a choreographed performance of feelings and called it truth. Emotion is no longer a reaction. It has become a weapon. And the one who wields it best is crowned a god. The society Tate described is one where people pay to watch others fall apart. Healing podcasts, memoirs, talk shows built on pain, and the public applauds as if witnessing some kind of triumph. Meghan cries, she's hailed as strong. Harry stays silent, he's dubbed an awakened man. But a man who refuses to cry, refuses to whine, refuses to blame gets labeled an oppressor. We no longer teach men how to rise, we teach them how to sit down, cry, and beg for sympathy. Tate called it a kind of collective emotional programming. Every man who practices self-control is seen as harboring unprocessed trauma. Every strong woman is rewarded for stepping onto a broadcast stage and telling stories of broken dreams and raw tears. This isn't progress, this is inversion. A society that doesn't teach men how to endure will raise children who don't know how to survive. To Tate, the Meghan saga is only a symptom of a global epidemic, the glorification of weakness, the sanctification of trauma, and the packaging of it as cultural commodity. You can call it awakening. I call it scripted suffering for consumption. He stressed, there is a massive market for people who know how to suffer out loud, and Meghan is a brilliant CEO in that industry. But the real tragedy doesn't lie with her. It lies with the crowd that's lost the ability to distinguish between truth and emotionally optimized content. She's not a phenomenon. She's the inevitable result of a society willing to glorify anyone who knows how to cry on cue. Tate didn't hide his contempt, but his voice also carried a cold sorrow, the sorrow of watching a generation of men being taught to go silent retreat and make room for pre-written inspirational stories. They say listen more. But ask yourself, does anyone still listen to the men who don't cry? He didn't deny that real pain exists, but he pointed out that when all pain is monetized, it ceases to be truth, it becomes product. You can't sell your suffering and expect others to believe you're not performing. And that's where he circled back. Meghan is not the brave storyteller that the media has built her up to be. She's the byproduct of a society that finds drama more satisfying than dignity. And Harry. He is the living proof of what happens when a man chooses someone else's emotions over the clarity of his own. Part 4. Meghan, the template of a manufactured era.
It on you. They're going to whip it up in the media machine and try and convince the world that you're somehow a dangerous person and you're a bad person and your ideas should be.
Andrew Tate didn't end with a curse. He ended with a warning. Meghan Markle is not the problem. Meghan is merely the mirror, and what we're looking into is the true face of modern society. According to Tate, Meghan is not a controversial figure, she's a mass-produced model. The model of a woman who knows how to shape her personal narrative into a media campaign, who masters the exact ratio of tears, injustice, identity, and a legal team, plus a TV production crew behind her. She is the most successful product of the artificial age, a product that knows when to smile, when to cry, and when to stop before backlash begins. Tate painted a world where truth no longer matters. What matters is who tells the story first and who tells it more emotionally. In that world, Meghan doesn't need to explain. She only needs to evoke feeling. And emotion, as every marketer knows, always beats logic. You can't argue with a crying fit. You can't expose a sorrowful gaze. You can only stay silent or be branded cruel. Meghan is the perfect embodiment of a terrifying truth. Whoever controls the narrative controls public morality. She doesn't need everyone's sympathy. She only needs a large enough majority to silence the rest. Tate called it the total victim strategy, where every mistake becomes a learning experience. Every criticism is labeled discriminatory, and every reaction is reframed as an act of hate. She doesn't apologize for breaking royal traditions. She doesn't express regret for pulling her husband away from his home. She doesn't acknowledge any fault in the avalanche of media controversies. Why? Because she's a victim. When someone becomes a permanent victim, they attain the ultimate power, moral immunity. Meghan can contradict herself, manipulate and fabricate stories, but still be defended simply because people believe she's been through enough. When the world sees you as pitiful, you no longer have to be credible. Tate ended with an icy reflection. Meghan is not a monster. She is the product of a culture that breeds monsters by feeding them stage lights, and if we don't recognize that there will be hundreds more Meghans to come. More sophisticated, softer, harder to expose. She's version 2.0 of the self-pity era, an upgrade with marketing, a fan base, a brand, and an artisanal jam shop. And in that world, truth doesn't need to exist. As long as emotions can be filtered, as long as tears can be replayed in slow motion, as long as audiences keep clicking, Meghan will never be the loser.